Once upon a time, we were studying the 9-square grid, our minds drifting back and forth between Roe, Eisenman, Tic-Tac-Toe, and Haydick, when we came across a peculiar passage. It relayed mythical tales of zoomorphic figures trapped within these imaginary grids. Our minds began wandering, and suddenly fantastic, animal-like characters were trapped in the surfaces of our house. They must have been hidden from view since modernism, invisible in the backgrounds to our daily lives. They emerged from their obscurity and began marching across town, hungry from their hibernation. During their travels, they came upon the old post office building in the middle of town. Now the building is mostly a hollow and deceptive mask for a group that calls themselves the Independent Media Center. The characters took refuge on the stoop, and instantly, they knew how to be useful again. They could help the IMC in their mission to make available the tools for broadcasting ideas into the world. The characters now have their story. This new narrative was made possible from the University of Illinois Office of Public Engagement, which funded their transformation of their surfaces into volumes. No longer frightened by their modernist poachers, the characters began solidifying into visible shapes and forms. Some became desks, some pin-up boards, some signs, and other storage. Crafted from found and repurposed materials and reshaped with the latest technology, the characters emerged like reconstructed dinosaur fossils into a museum. They work together, but maintain their individuality, all as part of the new Independent Media Center story.
I think it's great what they're doing. The post office left and the building never changed, and so the IMC never had their own identity. And so I think these characters really kind of bring the IMC's identity out. They bring things that weren't there before, like the community pinup board that they didn't have, or they support programs like Books for Prisoners.
So Allison and I started Design With Company a couple years ago. And since then we've been doing some competitions and small scale installations and building projects. We both teach at the University of Illinois.
We also, Hugh works with us quite often, so we are kind of collaborating in that sense.
Well, a couple of years ago I sent out a few emails to a few institutions around town that I thought could benefit from some sort of architectural intervention, and the IMC came back saying that they would be interested. They are a pretty interesting organization that does a lot of good for the community, and we just thought that'd be a great partnership. And it started out with kind of no idea about how funding would happen, and just thinking that maybe our resources, being teachers, trying to be able to round up students. At the time I was teaching the 101 course here and had access to a lot of freshmen who might be interested in doing stuff. And then we found this public engagement grant that could help fund some of the interventions.
We also, for a while, were talking with an architectural salvage company in town. So they've provided a lot of materials that they took out of kind of demolition projects. And so we were able to go and get a lot of that stuff. So, the wall project kind of came out of a lot of those materials that were salvaged. We are in the process. I think the most complete one is the wall, which I think was called Pinup Pam in the video. That one is almost
just
finished.
About finished. Yeah, we were just putting the last couple of pieces on yesterday. Actually. So that one is kind of like a community pinup space where different groups come into the IMC, and so they're able to kind of post information about what they're doing or kind of what's going on in the community.
And we are about halfway through with the desk that is in the lobby space, and then we're in the works to get the stamp finished, which is the Books for Prisoners receptacle. And hopefully, if we have time and additional funding, we will complete the other projects.
And the Books for Prisoners bins will be scattered throughout the city, so they'll give also a kind of identity to the Books for Prisoners project. We approached the client and we approached the funding, and so there's this kind of interesting relationship that we have with them that I think is there's kind of an odd way of working with architecture because they're kind of very happy to get whatever we can provide, and they are excited to see our ideas, and have very few kind of real requirements because we approached them with the possibilities, and they were very open to what architecture and design could provide them. And so I think that that's been a really valuable experience because of that. It makes for some tension in certain areas because we're making a lot of decisions where it's like, well, I don't know if they would like that more than that. But in the end, I think it's a really valuable, this kind of entrepreneurial way of architects operating in the world. I think it's an interesting model. We don't have a whole lot of experience making videos or films, and so we went through a lot of iterations in the beginning that kind of got scrapped, and we didn't quite know what to do, and we looked at a lot of examples. And what you can do in a video or film versus what you can do in other media, I think was a real opportunity to see the project in a new way that we hadn't even really considered it before, this kind of notion of the story or the narrative that starts to explore. We had that kind of idea as part of the project, this narrative about these characters, but then to be able to use the film or video to kind of give them a different kind of life, I thought was an interesting exercise, and we were really excited to see our own project through that lens. At first we were looking at some of those Chris Ware stories that are within This American Life. I don't know if you've ever seen those, but they're these kind of narrated comics that are really interesting, but end up being fairly complicated when you actually try to execute them. The idea started to click when we started to actually work on the voiceover part, when we figured out how much we could actually say within 2 minutes, which is not that much, and then just trying to record it and see how we sound versus like someone on TV like Mike Rowe or some other really kind of experienced narrator who, they go really slowly and you don't really notice what their craft is about until you try and do it yourself. So we refined it a lot and then tried to put the visuals to it, and then kind of went back to the text and kind of went back and forth. We always wanted it to be that stop motion thing, so we could slip in the kind of fantastical elements with the kind of filmic elements, and they kind of more seamlessly, or hopefully more seamlessly, kind of work together.